Hi, and welcome to the Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast for November 27th, 2023. We are going to review Week 12 in the NFL. I am joined not by Mike Tanier, but by Brian Knowles, who is sitting in for Mike, who's unable to be with us today because I believe his son has his driving test. So regular life has barged in on our little NFL podcast. A reminder, of course, that if you are watching live, which we do on Mondays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, you can make comments or ask questions. We'll take comments and questions about any of the Week 12 games. Brian, it's good to have you here. Let's talk about the immediate news first before we review yesterday's huge game, which was, of course, Bills-Eagles, which may have been the game of the year. Frank Reich fired by the Carolina Panthers. Do you have thoughts on this?
I've got a lot of thoughts about this. This Reich is now the first NFL coach in history to be fired in back-to-back seasons, so that's a little piece of history that he's got. Congratulations. It's crazy early to fire him, right? He's the earliest coach. He's had the shortest tenure of any coach since 1978. You just used a first-round pick on Bryce Young. You traded away next year's first pick to do it. It doesn't make any sense to cut bait this early. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that Frank Reich has done a fantastic job in Carolina. Obviously, there's been problems on both sides of the ball. They've changed who's been play calling back and forth. But this is a really fast trigger.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I was a big believer in Reich when he was in Indianapolis. I thought he was a good hire for Carolina. Obviously, things have been a bit of a mess this year. I don't know how much you can blame Frank Reich for the fact that Bryce Young looks so bad. Is it about the offense that he's in? Is it about the personnel that he has? Is it about how much they're developing him? I understand the idea that even after just 1 year, you would say, you know what, this isn't working. Let's try someone else. Why you would do it in the middle of the season seems a little like pointless to me. To me, this makes it less likely that someone wants to take this job in the future because it feels like David Tepper has this really quick trigger, but I don't think he gets anything out of it in exchange for that.
Absolutely. I mean, Tepper has fired all three of his coaches in midseason. He fired Ron Rivera midseason, he fired Matt Rule midseason, and now he's fired Frank Reich midseason. Every Panthers coach before Tepper took over got at least 3 years on the job. Tepper wants results immediately, and when he doesn't get it, he's just going to start firing until he gets someone there. That's not how you build a team. That's not how this works.
I realize everyone wants an NFL head coaching position, but if you are Ben Johnson or somebody, and Bobby Slowick maybe, and these positions come open for next year, and you're looking at Carolina, and you're like, we have a general manager. We have an owner who has a very quick trigger, who doesn't seem to understand that you have to develop players. We have a rookie quarterback who is very bad in his rookie year. We have no first-round pick. I mean, this is the kind of job that you might actually pass up, no matter how bad you want to be an NFL head coach.
I don't think anyone will pass it up because there are only 32 of these jobs, but it feels like it's going to be the lowest on the totem pole no matter what happens. So you'd rather go to Las Vegas, you'd rather go to probably Los Angeles, and then any job that's opening is going to be more enticing than this one. Yeah. I mean, someone's going to think, Bryce Young was the number one overall pick for a reason. Someone's going to think they can fix him, but you are going into a team with no resources and nothing going right now. And I don't think Chris Tibor is going to be able to turn things around so amazingly that, everything's going to be great. At this point, they should have just kept Steve Wilkes. I mean, well, what's the point of moving on? They were doing okay at the end of last season, and no, we want to blow things up, make a big splash now, and not even 2/3 of the way into the season, we're gonna blow it up again. It's not.
Kevin Clark asked yesterday on Twitter, what was the biggest mistake that any team has made since January in the NFL? And I said, well, first of all, it's two different questions, right? What was the biggest mistake given what we knew at the time? And what was the biggest mistake given what we know in hindsight? And my answer was, given what we knew at the time, the biggest mistake that any team has made is that the Jets did not go out and get a better quarterback after Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles. But given what we know right now, the biggest mistake is taking Bryce Young over CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I mean, it's far too early to write off, Bryce Young, but it's not far too early to crown C.J. Stroud. It's amazing how great Stroud has been since he came in.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about that Bills-Eagles game that ended up exactly as I predicted. I said the Bills are going to outplay them and they're going to lose by 3 points. And that's exactly what happened. And I'll admit that there's a little bit of bitterness for me after picking the Bills to make it to the Super Bowl about how this season has gone for them. But this is just how the season has gone for them and how the season has gone for the Eagles. Now, there are some EPA-based metrics out there that have this game as a win, in quotes, a win for the Bills, that the Bills outplayed the Eagles. I will point out that by DVOA, it was not. Okay, the Eagles got a 28% DVOA for this game. The Bills, 0% DVOA. And if you look at it without opponent adjustments, the Eagles are also still on top. Okay. The post-game win expectancy was Eagles 86%, in large part because of the penalties.
Yeah.
But also the Eagles had more yards per play, 5.9 to 5.6 if you take out things like kneel downs, and a higher success rate by my definition. Now, I think by the EPA definition of success rate, which is plays with an above of zero EPA, I think the Bills had the higher success rate. By my definition, the Eagles had a slightly higher success rate. Both teams had an interception, and both teams had a fumble, but both fumbles were recovered by the Eagles. By the Bills. The Bills recovered both fumbles. So it's not like the Bills get any value for the fact that they recovered their own fumble. And the fact is that the missed and blocked field goal, I don't give any credit to the Eagles for, even though a field goal block is obviously a good play, it's a non-predictive play, but I do take away from the Bills for the missed field goal and the blocked field goal. So I think that last drive is what changed things. The Eagles' offensive DVOA would have been 1% without the last overtime drive, and instead it was 15%. So it may have been that last overtime drive that put things over for the idea that the Eagles outplayed the Bills. But it was, for most of that game, the Bills had outplayed the Eagles.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, through 3.5 quarters, I think you could argue that the Bills have outplayed the Eagles there. They just floored it at the end of that game. Weird game. Like the first half was very interesting, but it felt like the Bills were in control, but weren't actually putting up enough points
They weren't running away with it. They were in control,
yeah.
But it was like the Eagles could come back.
Yeah, and then we had a quarter and a half of the Eagles coming back, and then we had a really exciting overtime period, and then we had a half quarter of madness at the end of the fourth, where both teams made crazy strategic decisions. And we ended up going into overtime. It was hair-pullingly annoying that both teams kind of just end of game strategy going out the window for 7 minutes of game time.
Yeah, there are a couple things I want to point out is we talk about the game of inches so often. There were two really important plays that could have been fumbled on the Eagles that were not. There was a Hurts sack fumble with 38 seconds left on the Buffalo 39. That was changed to an incomplete pass, I think correctly.
Yes.
That one I think was correct. Then in overtime with 3:33 left, also on the Buffalo 39, there was a pass to A.J. Brown where Dodson punched the ball out, and there was a real question as to whether it was an incomplete pass or a fumble recovered by Buffalo, which would have ended the game. And I think that it was very difficult to determine. There was a play later on in the Chargers-Ravens game that seemed like it was exactly the same, but went the other way. And I think that the difference between between the two plays was what was the call on the field. You have to sort of default to the call on the field.
Yeah, that fumble in overtime could have gone either way. Absolutely, it was 2.5 steps and drop.
What was your feeling about the Bills' decision to ice the kicker at the end of regulation and then kneel down with 20 seconds left? So instead of 20 seconds left and 2 timeouts to throw the ball anywhere on the field and try to get into field goal range, you had 1 timeout and they just closed up shop and went to overtime.
I never like icing the kicker just in general. I mean, I get it's a 59-yard kick, make them think about it, but no. Going into even if they hadn't had that second timeout, even if they only had one timeout left, how do you not take a shot there? You have Josh Allen, the biggest arm in the league. You've got Stephon Diggs. You've got 20 seconds. If you're the Bills, you know a team can come back in 20 seconds. You've seen it before. How do you not take at least one deep shot in that situation?
Romo said at the time, he was like, well, a strip sack is just as likely as a deep pass. No, a deep pass is more likely than a strip sack. I mean, yes, is there a risk of a strip sack? Sure. But what's more likely that you're going to complete it? It's more likely that, I mean, the most likely thing is you're going to have a couple of incomplete passes and go to overtime, but it's more likely that you're going to complete a pass than that you're going to have a strip sack.
Yeah, it's more likely that you're going to lose the coin flip and then never get the ball in overtime. Or it's more likely, just spitballing, that you'll win the coin flip, kick a field goal in overtime rather than regulation, not end the game, give the ball back to the Eagles and watch them score a touchdown, just thinking of things that might happen.
And it's another game of inches issue because Gabe Davis was wide open on third down. And there was miscommunication, and I don't know who to blame between Allen and Davis, but there was miscommunication, and the ball fell, and they had to kick the field goal. There were so many plays by the Eagles that were incredible. Two that I'll just the 3rd and 15 touchdown to Zacchaeus.
Yes.
Well, after that terrible Allen interception that turned it into, instead of the Eagles getting a field goal, that they took a 4-point lead, was amazing. That was an amazing pass and an amazing catch.
In an incredible situation, 3rd and 15.
And then the field goal. I mean, the 59-yard field goal in the rain was one of the great field goals in NFL history, really. Yeah.
I was yelling at the Eagles for settling for it. Like, I thought you get a few more yards. They ran one quarterback draw and another that looked like it was going to be a draw before a false start killed.
Well, I think they wanted more yards. I think they ran those plays thinking they'd get more yards, and I don't think they expected Jason Kelce of all people to false start twice, turning what would have been a 49 into a 59.
I mean, because we had just seen earlier in the day the Houston Texans who tried a 58-yard field goal in much better conditions, and it came up an inch short. It's like, throw the ball just a little bit deeper, because it felt like the Eagles were marching down the field almost at will in that last drive, and then they stopped. It was frustrating football at the end of the game there. It felt like neither team really was taking risks to try to win the game. They were both just like, we'll go to overtime and we'll settle it there.
So let's talk about where we go from here. Let's do the Bills first. Would you fire Sean McDermott?
No, I think McDermott has earned a year of things going wrong. I think I would make McDermott hire defensive coordinator because I assume was the plan beforehand, because they that replacement at the last minute. But I don't believe in firing a coach after one bad year when you've had a number of good years beforehand. I don't believe this is all McDermott's fault.
Well, I mean, I know the argument from Bills fans is that they've underperformed now for 3 straight years.
Have they? That's they've underperformed this year, certainly, but like they're in the playoffs year after year. They're making deep runs. You only one team can win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's true. And it's tough. I like McDermott. I think he's good with 4th downs. I think he's good at managing his players. He seems good at locker room management. I don't know what the deal with Stephon Diggs, but it hasn't stopped them from being number 2 in offensive DVOA. So I think that situation was well managed. I do wonder if it's time for a change, just because things get
stale after some point in time.
But what would be better? I guess that what you would think you hire a young offensive mind who can take over the offense and fiddle with it, and do you hire Ben Johnson? Do you hire Bobby Slowick? If you are a young offensive coordinator, this would be the best job in the league if it was open. So basically, I would think if the Bills fire McDermott, they have their choice of coaches.
Yeah, and part of that
actually, that's not necessarily true, because their salary cap situation for next year is bad.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, this was I misspoke, because this is the last year of this window, so it's not necessarily the best job. You have a great quarterback, but the salary cap situation is awful for next year.
That's it. If you are doing a mini rebuild, if you're doing a mini blow up because of the salary cap, then it might make sense to change the coach, just to bring someone else in to oversee that. You're going to rebuild the team around Allen, around whichever plays you choose to keep. Have someone else be there from the beginning of that process. I could see that argument. I don't think I could see McDermott being fired just for performance reasons.
The other question then is what happens to the Eagles from here? Because we're going to talk a lot about this. How good are the Eagles really? And the fact is that for people for whom win-losses is the only indicator, obviously the Eagles are the best team in the league. And for people who believe in the clutch gene, obviously they're very, very clutch. And the fact that you hit a 59-yard field goal in the rain means you're going to do it again and again. And the fact that you hit a 3rd and 15 touchdown means you're going to do it again and again. And, some people believe that if you win a game by 3 points, it means you're going to win all your games by 3 points. Some of us don't believe that. And the fact is the Eagles are not the worst 10-1 team in DVOA history. There were two that were much worse, the 1984 Broncos and the 2012 Falcons. But they're the 3rd lowest DVOA of a 10-1 team. They're a lot lower than they were last year at this time when they were also 10-1. And I do think that the close wins are not necessary. Somebody said to me yesterday, they're not a bad team. They're like the Packers from a couple years ago who went 13-3 or 13-4, but really should have been like 11-5. But so they were still a pretty good team, but they weren't as good as their record. That's sort of where the Eagles are. They're 8th. They're now 8th in DVOA, and I think most advanced metrics have them that way. I mean, the fact that they're likely to get the number 1 seed makes them a strong Super Bowl contender, but despite their record, they're not the best team in the league.
They're a good team with a great record. And I saw multiple people online comparing them to last year's Vikings, which is crazy. No, the Vikings were a terrible team with amazing luck. The Eagles are a good team with great results, and that happens sometimes, and that's fine. It is, I think, somewhat meaningful that the Eagles have found ways to take the best shots from, the Bills, from the Chiefs, from the Cowboys, and come back and win those games. I would really like to see them at some point just take someone out to the woodshed. Start from the beginning of the game, score 30 points, blow them out, and they haven't had one of those games yet.
And it can be a bad team too. You don't have to take a good team to the woodshed. You can take a bad team to the woodshed. Just do it.
They finished with Giants, Cardinals, Giants. That would be a good time to do it. But we're all still waiting for the NFC Championship level Eagles to come out and play, and they haven't done that for 4 quarters yet this season.
And this sets up, obviously, for very interesting 49ers versus the Eagles next week, where the 49ers, despite having the worst win-loss record, are favored, I believe, by 1.5 points at this point.
Favored on the road by not by much, but still. That is
and I would take them. And I would take the 49ers. I trust my numbers. I think the 49ers are the better team, especially with Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey all healthy. I think that especially if Lane Johnson can't play, right? I think the 49ers are the better team right now.
And the Niners are coming off a 10 days rest, and the Eagles played, I think, 96 defensive plays and had a number of injuries that would be worth monitoring. This is not a great time for the Eagles to be going on here. And had they lost one of these last 3 games, this would be an incredibly important game for number 1 seed and overall like that. As it stands, if the Eagles win, they're the number 1 seed. I mean, I know that there's time left, and mathematically things can happen, but they'll have a 3-game lead with the tiebreaker,
and with the ridiculous Giants, Cardinals, Giants to end the season. Yeah,
right. So if the Eagles win this week, that basically ends the competitive portion of their regular season. They'll have to win a couple games from here.
They can lose to Dallas and they'll be fine.
Lose to Dallas, lose to Seattle, no worries. That's so.
Yeah. I just lost you there for a second, so I don't know what you said, but you're still there now. Don't forget, people who are watching live, you can make comments and ask questions, and we're here at 11 a.m. Eastern on Mondays and Thursdays. Let's talk, do our usual Monday categories. What was your biggest surprise of the week?
My biggest surprise, it's not the fact that the Broncos beat the Browns. It's that the Broncos kind of throttled the Browns. The Browns with one of the best defenses we've ever recorded, so on and so forth. And the Broncos just kind of ran all over them all game long. It was surprising the level to which Denver looked like the better team. Some of it was some weird Kevin Stefanski play calling. They had 2 fumbles on trick plays with, a direct snap to Bryant, the weird reverse from Pierre Strong to Elijah Moore. But just the Broncos just kept running and running. They got, I think it was 176 yards, which is not what we've come to expect from the Browns defense this season. The Broncos have had this incredible zombie team. We all wrote them off for dead at 1-5, and they just keep winning and keep winning and keep winning. I don't know how sustainable it is because they have they've had 15 takeaways over the last 4 games, which does not seem like something they're going to be able to do week in and week out. But they looked like a much better team than the Browns, who have been, so defensively dominant this year.
What's remarkable is the Broncos defense is still last on the season in DVOA because of the first 5 games.
It was so terrible.
That's how bad the first 5 games were. Even though they've been a top 10 defense for the last 6-7 games or whatever, they are still 32nd. Even though Arizona had a terrible game this week and Washington had a terrible game this week, and Denver is still last because of those first 5 games. It's wild.
Don't give up 70 points. That's an analytical tip for you.
My biggest surprise of the week was the Giants over the Patriots.
Yeah.
As bad as things are for the Patriots, they've had some good performances this year. They've played some tough games. They played the Eagles tough in week 1. That's one of the reasons why the Eagles are not higher in DVOA, is because of that week 1 game against the Patriots. The Giants are the last place team in DVOA. The Patriots are like 25th or something. And I thought the Patriots would win this one. We're more likely to win this one, but it's just, everything is horrible for them. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. And Tommy DeVito has been surprisingly okay, except for the 900 million sacks that he takes. But when it comes to actually throwing the ball, he has been reasonable. We all made fun of him at the beginning, but the fact is he's been kind of reasonable, and the Giants have kind of come from dead to have 4 wins, and which is bad for them in the long run, honestly, because it means a worse draft pick. But yay. I'm in a strange place as a Patriots fan rooting for losses, but yay losses.
Yeah. There is no Mac Jones. There's no Billy Zappi. There is only Patriots quarterback. Both of them came in and we're bad.
They made the same pick on the same play. They threw a pick. Each of them threw a pick on the exact same play.
At this point, throw Millie Cunningham back there. See what you got.
What was your yes, I was right, confirm my priors moment of the week?
Going back to the preseason, Jesse Bates was a really, really good signing for the Atlanta Falcons. Bates kind of willed the Falcons to victory over the Saints. Had I think 12 tackles, one of them that saved a touchdown on third down. He had the pick 6, and there's something nice about seeing a Falcon defensive back in those colors doing the high stepping down the sidelines. It just feels right, even if it's not quite the right uniform for Deion Sanders. He had the peanut punch at to force the fumble in the fourth quarter when the Saints were in the red zone. The Saints got into the red zone 5 times, and they didn't score a touchdown. At least 3 of those times, it was because of Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates almost single-handedly won that game for the Falcons, and they are your current NFC South leaders. Do not ask about the record.
My eye was right. Well, first of all, I predicted that the Bills would lose by 3.
Yeah.
So there you go. The Steelers' offense is not really that bad. I have been writing about it for a couple of weeks. When the Steelers finally play a reasonable defense rather than a good defense, they're going to have a good offensive game. And they did. They finally had 400 net yards in a game for the first time since 2020. They had a 47% DVOA for the game overall, but it was not their best offensive game of the year because of opponent adjustments. It was only like their 4th or 5th best offensive game of the year because the Steelers offense, because of their avoiding turnovers and the difficult schedule that they've played, the Steelers offense is better than people thought it was. And it was good to get rid of Canada. The motions made more sense. There was more play action. There was a lot more going up the seam. They took advantage of the fact that the Bengals are bad against tight ends, and they used a ton of Freiermuth, and that was good. But I think that I was right. The Steelers offense is better than people think, and the Steelers as a team are better than people think.
Yeah, it looked more competently run than under Canada, but they've just faced every single good defense in the league, like twice in some cases.
We usually review the reverse post-game win expectancy games, but there weren't any.
Oh, okay.
The closest was the Giants, 79%. So let's count up the week, the top 10 in DVOA. Cleveland falls out of the top 10. The new 10th team is Pittsburgh.
Okay. All right.
I realize we like them better than other advanced metrics, but their defense, they've got a top 10 defense, and by our numbers, an average offense. And that makes them a top 10 team. I don't think they're a real Super Bowl threat or anything like that. You know, they're going to lose in the first round of the playoffs, I'm sure, but they're a better team than people give them credit for, and a better team than yardage totals give them credit for.
Yes.
Number 9 is Jacksonville. Number 8, rising 2 spots, the Philadelphia Eagles.
All right, that seems about right.
And, you know, we talk every week about, you know, what teams do we think Philadelphia is better than that DVOA doesn't? Okay. 7, Detroit. Right now, would you take Philly over Detroit?
Yeah, because Detroit's defense is having issues.
I would too. Number 6, Miami. I think I would take Philly over Miami right now.
Yes, because Miami's defense is having some issues.
Number 5, Buffalo.
Yeah, I think we saw that.
I think that those teams are basically equal. Number 4, Dallas. And we'll see Dallas and Philly play each other in a couple of weeks. But right now, I think Dallas is playing better than Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Number 3, Kansas City.
We saw that.
And number 2 and 1, with less than 1% between them, the gap between the top 2 teams in Kansas City is 12.5%. But the gap between the top 2 teams is less than 1%. Number 2, San Francisco. And number 1, thanks to Zay Flowers not sliding short of the end zone. I think if Zay Flowers doesn't get that big run at the end, San Francisco's number 1. But number 1 is still Baltimore. Baltimore is still number 1 in DVOA.
That shows you how tight it is. You know, one play can flip it around like that. Yeah. I mean, that I cannot remember the top 2 being this close, this late into the season.
Yeah, they're pretty. I mean, San Francisco. I mean, you know, if you put a gun to my head and said pick which team would win between San Francisco and Baltimore, I think San Francisco is the better team. Both teams have overcome some games where they had injuries, but I think San Francisco had a little bit more to overcome with the injuries that they've overcome. And they have Hufanga out now, but Baltimore still has Humphrey out now. Anyway, I would still pick San Francisco, and I think you would too.
It depends on where it is. I mean, Baltimore, I might go with the Ravens in that one, but we'll find out in a few weeks because the Niners have the Ravens to end the season.
It's Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Let's preview Monday Night Football. Bears at the Vikings. Bears are 24th in DVOA. Vikings are 14th in DVOA. And here's my favorite split that I discovered from this game. The Vikings offense versus base personnel, 4 yards a play, minus 30% DVOA. The Vikings versus nickel, 6.3 yards per play and 13% DVOA. So much better. The Bears in base, 4.5 yards per play, minus 11% DVOA. The Bears in nickel, 5.6 yards per play, 18% DVOA. So basically, even though there will not be a Justin Jefferson, spread out the Bears, make the Bears play nickel, throw on them, you'll be good. Vikings should win this game.
That, you know, I'd be surprised if the Bears win this one. I mean, they've looked a little better the last couple of weeks as they've actually started using Justin Fields and whatnot. But no, the Vikings are the better football team.
I will say that the picks against the spread formula likes the Bears plus 3, but I like the Vikings minus 3 in this one.
Yeah, if it was 3.5, I could see the Bears hanging around, the Vikings winning by a field goal, but 3 points is not enough for me.
All right. That does it for today's show. Brian Knowles, thank you for joining me. Of course, you can read Brian at BryKnow on Twitter, at BryKnow_ on Threads, Playoff Predictors website, at the FTN DVOA page as well. You can read me, of course, at the FTN DVOA page, which is ftnfantasy.com/DVOA. And don't forget to check out the Cyber Monday deal on FTN. If you check my Twitter account, you'll find a retweet. I'm sorry that I can't remember what the password is, but you can get 40% off of an FTN subscription. So you definitely want to check that out. I will be back on Thursday with Mike Tanier again, and we will preview week 13 in the NFL. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to the podcast afterwards, and we will talk to you on Thursday. So long.